The PGA Tour is suspending 17 of its players for participating in the controversial Saudi-backed golf league, the LIV League. Coy Wire with more on this in this morning's Bleacher Report. This was a big move. I think it was expected, but this is huge.
Huge, Brianna. Golf's changing, certainly, as we know it. Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson, 5 other major champions. They all teed up yesterday outside of London in the first ever event of that new LIV Golf Series. And as soon as they did, Brianna, the PGA Tour releasing their statement, suspending the 17 PGA Tour players indefinitely. Commissioner Jay Monahan saying, quote, "These players have made their choice for their own financial-based reasons, but they can't demand the same PGA Tour membership benefits, considerations, opportunities, and platform as you. That expectation disrespects you, our fans, and our sponsors," unquote. LIV Golf called the move vindictive, saying it would deepen the divide between the tour and its members. Mickelson, Johnson, and others are still eligible to play in the U.S. Open next week, though, Brianna, because golf's 4 majors are organized independently of the PGA Tour. So it should be interesting to see some of those players perhaps rejoin with some of their PGA Tour colleagues.
Yeah, but that will be tense, won't it?
Yes, indeed.
All right, New Day continues right now. Good morning to viewers here in the U.S. and around the world. It is Friday, June 10th. I'm Brianna Keeler with John Berman. Donald Trump lit the flame with his election lies, culminating in the deadly violence during an attempted coup at the U.S. Capitol. That was the case made by the January 6th committee in its first public primetime hearing. They presented never-before-seen video of the violence as rioters breached the Capitol. They had gripping testimony from a U.S. Capitol police officer who suffered a traumatic brain injury during the attack. And the committee's vice chair, Republican Liz Cheney, says Trump had a 7-part plan to prevent the transition of presidential power that included pressuring Vice President Mike Pence to refuse to count certified electoral votes in violation of the Constitution and the law. Pence, of course, refused.
And aware of the rioters' chance to hang Mike Pence, the president responded with this sentiment, quote, "Maybe our supporters have the right idea. Mike Pence, quote, deserves it."
The committee also used taped deposition testimony from Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr and his daughter and advisor Ivanka to show that Trump was told repeatedly that his claims of election fraud leading up to the insurrection were not true. Following the hearing, Committee Chair Benny Thompson gave CNN a hint of what's to come in the hearings ahead.
Are there going to be witnesses that describe actual conversations between these extremist groups and anyone in Trump's orbit?
Yes.
There will be.
Yes.
Right, much more on that in a little bit. Joining us now, though, Ellie Holding, former federal prosecutor and CNN legal analyst. Ellie, I want to start with something the committee seemed to be doing quite deliberately, which also tees up what will be the second hearing here, which is to make the case that Donald Trump was told that he knew or should have known that he lost. Listen.
I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bullshit.
I was in the Oval Office, and at some point in the conversation, Matt Oskowski, who is the lead data person, was brought on, and I remember he delivered to the president pretty blunt terms that he was going to lose.
So testimony from the Attorney General Bill Barr that he told Trump that he lost, basically, and testimony from Jason Miller, who was a key advisor who explained a conversation where Trump was told that the data would show he lost.
This was remarkable. I mean, Liz Cheney took a flamethrower to the big lie. She proved beyond any question that there's no possible way Donald Trump won this election, and he knew it too. And she used the words of Donald Trump's own people against him, which I think is a really important persuasive technique. Also, John, this goes to the question of intent. Right? One of the defenses of Donald Trump is, and has been, well, he genuinely believed he won the election, so he was just pursuing those remedies, which he's entitled to do. But when you see this, you find out Bill Barr, his loyal attorney general, says, I told Donald Trump to his face 3 times you lost. And then the Jason Miller testimony shows that the data analytics guru told Donald Trump, you have lost. Now, Jason Miller did add some important context afterwards. He said, the next thing I said, which you did not see, is that Donald Trump said to the data guy, well, I disagree with you. That's why intent can get a little bit complex. But I thought this was really effective use of the deposition
A
testimony.
lawyer then would come back and say Trump knew or should have known,
Exactly.
or was told certainly that he'd lost. And Ivanka Trump also testified that she put credence in what Bill Barr said. We also heard the committee try to use Donald Trump's own words or own tweets in some cases against him. Listen.
At 6:01 p.m. on January 6th, after he spent hours watching a violent mob besiege, attack, and invade our Capitol, Donald Trump tweeted, but he did not condemn the attack. Instead, he justified it. These are the things and events that happen, he said, when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots.
I thought it was so interesting that Liz Cheney used this particular tweet because we've known about this tweet since Donald Trump sent it at 6:01 p.m. on January 6th. And I've always felt this is one of the most underrated but important pieces of evidence. We talk about Donald Trump's intent in the lead up to January 6th itself. You want an insight into Donald Trump's intent about the Capitol attack, about what happened that day? Look at this tweet. He sends it hours, just a few hours after the attack is over. They've ransacked the Capitol. And what does Donald Trump say? He calls these people, quote, great patriots. And he says in a celebratory manner, remember this day forever. And so the question is, when Donald Trump's at that podium a few hours before, making this speech to the crowd, and then they ransacked the Capitol, was he shocked and horrified, or was he pleased? Did they do exactly what he intended? I think that tweet is really important evidence, and I think it was smart of them to focus on it.
I want to play a little bit more of Liz Cheney, and I want everyone to listen to how carefully she chooses her words and the word she keeps on using, which is illegal, illegally, illegality. Listen.
What President Trump demanded that Mike Pence do wasn't just wrong, it was illegal and it was unconstitutional. That President Trump's efforts to pressure Vice President Pence to act illegally by refusing to count electoral votes likely violated 2 federal criminal statutes. You will hear how President Trump summoned a violent mob and directed them illegally to march on the United States Capitol.
Liz Cheney might as well have turned into the camera and said, Merrick Garland, I'm talking to you. It's become that obvious. And there's been a change of tone, John. If you think to the early days of the committee, when the members were asked, do you think this is a crime? They were circumspect. They would tiptoe around. They would say, that's not for us. The evidence will speak for itself. Now they're outright campaigning to DOJ by calling the conduct illegal and criminal. And so I think it's clear. But it's important to keep in mind, much easier for a member of Congress to say this is a crime than for actual prosecutors to charge and convict, right? A prosecutor has to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. The standard for a member of Congress saying it's a crime is they feel like saying it's a crime. Also, important to keep in mind, last night's presentation was bipartisan, yes, but one-sided. There was no pushback. There was no cross-examination, the kind of things you would see in a court, which can make it much more difficult. But there's no question this committee's trying to talk to DOJ.
No, and it sets the stage. Liz Cheney says it was illegal, and now the next several hearings will be the evidence that they think proves their case there. Ellie Honig, thank you very much.
And with more on this, let's bring in George Conway, attorney and contributing columnist for The Washington Post. There's been so much frustration by Trump critics who wonder why he isn't held accountable. But the committee is making it clear that is their intention, that they are going to hold him accountable.
That's absolutely right. And Representative Cheney's remarkable statement was essentially an opening statement for a prosecution of Donald Trump. You could, if you were a prosecutor and you were looking for a model to use in a case against him to go in front of a jury, you would have used that. And that's what she was. She's trying to make the case that, again, those 2 criminal statutes that she was referring to, 18 U.S.C. 371, 18 U.S.C. 1512, were both violated. And what's great about what they did last night was they didn't just make it about January 6th. They made it about everything that happened apart from what happened on January 6th, the pressure on Pence, the pressure on state legislatures and state officials, and the attempt to co-opt the Justice Department. And so, again, that's part of a larger conspiracy to the point where the violence, in a sense, although it was a very important part of last night's presentation, isn't necessary for the criminal conspiracy. It was the fact that they were trying to get people to do something that was illegal, like fake electoral certificates, not counting the votes by Vice President. That was all illegal, and Donald Trump knew it, and the knowledge that he had that it was unlawful was based upon the fact that he was told by his own people, Ivanka, by Jason Miller, by Bill Barr, that it was bullshit, to use Barr's word.
And they're describing, you know, what you hear the committee describe as the mob was Trump's instrument, right? And this is what they're intending to prove. This is what they're going to lay out in the other hearings. We heard from Benny Thompson, the chairman. He told our Jake Tapper that there are conversations between extremists and those in Trump's orbit. What do you think about that? Is that essential for proving a link, for proving culpability of Donald Trump?
No, for the reason why I just said, because in a sense that the conspiracy existed without the violence. The violence was the last step, and he fomented it regardless of whether or not he spoke indirectly or directly to the Proud Boys. He fomented it by saying, basically, go up to the Hill, fight. And he fomented it by tweeting, you know, by watching the television. While he was watching TV and seeing all this violence, he tweeted an attack on Mike Pence, and which resulted immediately, you saw the guy with the bullhorn last night reading Trump's tweet while the people started chanting, hang Mike Pence. And then you heard what the testimony is about Trump's reaction. And then most importantly, the 3 hours where he did nothing. And you know, that and from an emotional standpoint, the contradiction, the incredible contrast between the fidelity to duty of the Capitol Police officer who was slipping on her colleague's blood and the complete dereliction of constitutional duty by the President of the United States. It's just a damning portrait, and it would make an amazing trial presentation.
When you were listening, and it did sound like that, this is what we intend to prove over the course of these hearings. When you were listening last night, did it tell you anything about what this committee intends to do when it comes to potential criminal referrals? And if you were Merrick Garland watching this, what would your takeaway be?
My takeaway, and I hope it's not just Merrick Garland, I hope it's other trial lawyers in the Department of Justice are thinking, yeah, this case could be tried. We could do this. In fact, I think it's going to be hard for them not to do it after seeing all of this evidence, because there's not much to respond to other than Donald Trump's self-serving statements that, it was fake news, it was fraud. There's a reason why Donald Trump has always avoided being cross-examined under oath as much as possible, why he didn't do it in the Mueller investigation. He's got nothing to say, and if he ever tried to testify in his own defense at a trial, he'd get creamed, and he's not courageous enough to do it. So they're not going to really have much of a response. They're not going to have anything to run up against all of this evidence from Trump's own people.
Let's listen to what Liz Cheney said to her fellow Republicans who have largely spurned her.
Tonight, I say this to my Republican colleagues who are defending the indefensible. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain.
What did you think about that?
I thought it was one of the most compelling moments of the evening, because this isn't about partisan politics. It isn't about the midterm elections. It could be about a future prosecution of people who should be held criminally liable. But it's also a moment in history. And that is what Liz Cheney is looking to at risk to her own personal political career. And that's what she was speaking to there, the verdict of history, which is going to be very, very harsh on the Republicans who supported and are trying to wash this away.
George, it's always great to have you. George Conway, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Joining me now is former Trump White House press secretary and communications director Stephanie Grisham, who's testified before the January 6th committee twice. Stephanie, you have a unique view of some of the people that we heard from for the first time last night on this subject, including these videotaped depositions, the snippets. Jared Kushner, the former president's son-in-law, was asked about the warnings from the White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, that he would quit if the Trump people and the Justice Department carried out some of the actions that they were looking to. Listen to this.
Jared, are you aware of instances where Pat Cipollone threatened to resign?
I kind of, like I said, my interest at that time was on trying to get as many pardons done. And I know that, he was always, him and the team were always saying, oh, we're going to resign. We're not going to be here if this happens, if that happens. So I kind of took it up to just be whining, to be honest with you.
Just whining. How did that strike you, Stephanie?
It was chilling for me because that was something that Jared would say to all of us if we would bring up concerns about pretty much anything, was that it was whining and we just needed to get back to work. The president makes the waves. We just need to ride them. I could go on and on with all of his little sayings, but that was tough for me just because I had been there, and that was just a message that was given to all of us all the time. Stop whining.
What was your major takeaway after watching everything last night, including some of the never-before-seen footage from the day itself?
Well, I have to be honest, the footage it made me physically sick. I felt physically ill last night, which brought up tons of different emotions. But I will say, and just like the two guests who were on prior to me, I think that it's great that they're laying this out like a legal case, because ultimately it is going to be up to the DOJ. This was almost 2 years ago now, and memories are short. People are truly worried about paying bills and putting food on the table. We've got a lot of issues happening in our country right now. So I think that it is so important that this is laid out like a legal case, and I'm glad they're doing that. I want to say thank you right now publicly to the witnesses. I know it's so scary to speak up. I know that they're going to have some issues and threats. So I want to say that publicly right now. That's very brave. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And I hope others will step up, maybe watching these people's courage.
One of the witnesses, at least in terms of being deposed, was Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter. And she was asked about Bill Barr's comments. And we heard his deposition also, where he told the president that the claims of voter fraud were BS. Listen to what Ivanka said here.
How did that affect your perspective about the election when Attorney General Barr made that statement?
It affected my perspective. I respect Attorney General Barr. So I accepted what he was saying.
She accepted Barr's claims, notes, observations that there was no fraud to overturn the election. Stephanie Grisham, are you still with us?
I don't think so.
I think we might have lost Stephanie there. Back. She's back. Stephanie Grisham is back with us again. I appreciate you're back. The magic of television. Yeah. Look, yes, Ivanka Trump is saying that she took Barr at his word that there was no fraud. Was that your experience within Trump world, that people knew that there was no there?
Yeah, well, yes. It reminded me two things I want to say. Number one, with regard to Ivanka, I think that that's all well and good that she said that she believed Bill Barr, but if I remember correctly, she was still traveling with her father while he pushed this big lie. So, if she was truly that impacted by Bill Barr, which she should have been, and I don't know what kind of conversations she was having privately with her father, but perhaps she could have done a little bit more and not stood by his side while he publicly pushed the big lie. It also reminded me very much of our White House and how everybody did that. It was a workaround. Everybody knew that one thing he was saying wasn't true. And so we all just kind of tried to work around him to get the best outcome we could for the country, all the while trying to keep this weird secret from this man. Again, I always say it's like the no clothing. I can't even think of it right now, but it was just an interesting thing to see. And I wish she would have, if that were the case, she would have spoken up more.
Stephanie Grisham, we do appreciate your time and your patience. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
In minutes, we are going to be joined by the family of fallen Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who lost his life following the Capitol insurrection.
Plus, disturbing new details about the police response, or the lack of the police response, to the Uvalde school shooting. What officers reportedly knew before they waited more than an hour to take down the gunman.
June 20th, a CNN concert event. Let's celebrate, educate, and lift every voice. Juneteenth, a global celebration for freedom. Live from the Hollywood Bowl, only on CNN.
Being a Rest Evac robs these children of their soul. They never feel like they're valued. I remember one of the girls said to me, "It's as if I'm living, but I don't exist." My name is Joan Kahn, and I am the Executive Director for Restobec Freedom Foundation based in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Restobec Freedom Foundation works with children who are living as Restobec. It's a form of child slavery. Many of them work from sunup to sundown. They do most of the chores for the family. When CNN came to Haiti for the Freedom Project with Common Dreams, we found this child in an area that we work. Her name is Fedna, and she lived with her grandfather at the time. And we went to visit the grandfather and asked if he would allow her to go to school. And he agreed to do that. And so we actually took her and enrolled her in school for the first time. She was 9 years old. Now Fedna is 20, and so she's in the 10th grade. They get a really late start on life, but at least they are able to be part of society. And I think just seeing these children become visible to people is a powerful thing.
I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? Or would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Aaron Burnett out front on CNN.
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here?
How concerned are you about the front line?
You don't believe that there's a racial divide here.
Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough, do you think? All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're a part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, Tuesday through Saturday only on CNN.
This is the screen where it happens. The moments that can change the world.
These are the faces we see, the voices we empower. This is the work that continues, who we are today and what we can become.
This is journalism that reflects the world we live in.
Heard it all before? But have you heard it like this?
The ultimate disruptor looks set to shake up our world. We really can't ignore the impact that this has. What can we do that explores a fresh angle? So let's untangle the players and political forces. The truth is a lot more complex. What's really going on?
Fast-paced news, in-depth reports, and fact checks from the perspective of The Global Brief with Bianca Nobilo. Tonight on CNN.
I'm Max Foster in London, and this is CNN.
Tomorrow, activists seeking meaningful gun safety reform will march in D.C. as part of the March for Our Lives movement, just like in 2018, following the mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, that killed 17 people. The leaders are urging people to join the more than 450 marches planned in at least 45 states and all around the world. Joining us now to talk about this is the co-founder of the March for Our Lives, David Hogg, who attended Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, where those 17 people were killed, and Zoe Teray, who is a March for Our Lives activist. She attended Oxford High School in Michigan, where 4 students recently died and several were injured after a shooting there last November. Thank you to both of you for joining us to talk about this. It's such a critical juncture here. What's the message that you're bringing, David, with this march?
Ultimately, the message that we're bringing is that the movement is bigger than ever, we're more united than ever, and we're more inclusive than ever, specifically of gun owners, of Republicans. Like, I've talked to many people who don't agree with us, who don't agree with me. And what we all agree on, though, is that we have to do something to address gun violence. And that's why I think that we can make this time different. We're showing that the NRA doesn't speak for all gun owners. It doesn't speak for all Republicans. And we're marching hand in hand with Republicans, with Democrats, with gun owners and non-gun owners to demand action, because that's all we're looking for here, because we have the same goal, and that's peace. And that's why we're marching on June 11th. And for anybody that would like to join us, they can text MARCH to 954-954. And once again, that's MARCH to 954-954.
And you've been meeting with stakeholders, you've been meeting with lawmakers. Zoe, what has your message been to them?
Honestly, when I first got started, my message was just like very unclear, but now it's just like getting involved any way you can so that nothing happens to any other school like it did to our schools.
Yeah.
You're new to this.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. Unfortunately, you're in a terrible club of someone who's gone through this. David's been doing this a little longer. Mm-hmm. What has this process been like for you as you try to speak up for people who did not survive?
It's definitely been like really hard. Sometimes it's very like emotionally stressful. So I'll like have moments where I need to go out and like cry, or I need to go have a moment. But honestly, it's been really cool also to like do different things to know that I can help in some way. And like working with David's been really cool, and Zoe and like all the different people that we've been working with. So it's been a really cool experience still.
You've been trying to make a difference here. Right now, Democrats and Republicans in the Senate are in negotiations. I want to listen to what the lead Senate Democratic negotiator had to say to our John Berman about that.
I don't think you can be anything other than comparatively optimistic. I've been part of many negotiations before since Sandy Hook. Obviously, my life is devoted to this cause on behalf of the victims. And I have never been part of a negotiation that's this serious. Our group continues to grow in size. No one has walked away from the table. I mean, listen, I still think there are more paths to failure than there are to success, but we've never gotten this far on complicated, comprehensive negotiations before.
You seem to share his optimism. Can you explain why? Because I think sometimes in this debate, a lot of people feel like Congress is never going to do anything, but you think they may actually do something now.
Yeah, and it's not going to be earth-shattering overnight. Unfortunately, kids are still going to die tomorrow, this week, and next year because Congress is not going to do anything massive, as much as I would like to see that. But any progress is better than nothing. But it needs to actually be progress and not just some talking point. Whatever policies are implemented around funding suicide prevention, around mental health, for example, because we need to recognize that while mental health does have a role to play in stopping gun violence, racism and hatred are not mental illnesses. But I think the reason why I feel hopeful is that we have more Republicans and Democrats and gun owners and even former gun industry executives with us than ever before. And, you know, I trust people like Chris Murphy, who have been doing this work for decades. I trust people like Nicole Hockley, you know, whose child died in Sandy Hook, who've been doing this work for so much longer than I have or Zoe has. And it's sad to see them get older as still nothing changes. But I think we're on the tipping point of something. But people need to understand the reason why this could be different. It's not for sure because nothing is guaranteed, but it could be different is because people are calling their senators. Republican moms are calling their senators and saying, look, I voted Republican my entire life. You need to do something here. You know, parents are fed up. Kids are fed up. Teachers are fed up. We're marching with NEA and AFT. And the way that we can make this different is everybody that's watching this right now, regardless of whether or not you're a Democrat or Republican, focusing on getting action. We know what we disagree on. Let's figure out what we can and come to the table and get something done to save our kids, because we all can agree on that.
David and Zoe, thank you so much for being with us this morning. This is a critical part in this debate. It's essential to hear your voices.
And we need people to march with us on June 11th.
June 11th. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll be joined by the brothers of fallen Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who died after confronting rioters. The video that his family wants the world to see.
And the PGA Tour taking actions against players who join a Saudi-backed league.
Back in person, the 2022 Afreximbank annual meetings will bring together high-profile continental and global leaders to harness and leverage Africa's incredible potential. Register now.
Afghan women are afraid that this is the beginning of your efforts to erase them from the workspace.
Malumnis, it's not clear. Even if we appear with the burqa, maybe they will say that women's voices are forbidden.
Did you ever imagine that you would be prevented from going to school?
Girls' education is fundamental to the dignity of Afghan life.
Do you believe that young girls will be allowed to go to school here in Afghanistan?
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels, connected to your world.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
The family of fallen Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick was at last night's primetime hearing where they heard, for the first time, along with the rest of the nation, exactly what happened to Officer Sicknick on that day. He confronted the rioters before suffering 2 strokes and dying of natural causes the next day. Capitol Police Officer Carolyn Edwards, who was injured in the riot, described the scene.
All of a sudden, I see movement to the left of me, and I turned, and it was Officer Sicknick with his head in his hands. And he was ghostly pale, which I figured at that point that he had been sprayed, and I was concerned. My, cop alarm bells went off.
Joining me now are Brian Sicknick's brothers, Ken and Craig Sicknick. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. I know you were at the hearing last night. I know your mother was there as well. What was it like for you to hear Officer Edwards' testimony?
It was, so I didn't know the part about, I knew Brian got sprayed. I've seen the video only once because it's very hard for me to watch it, but I didn't know of the look of his skin, that he was pale when he got hit by the, so that was new to us. I can't say that I'm hardened to this, but it's been over a year of constantly seeing attacks and video and news agencies. So there wasn't a lot of shock per se, but it was new information to us.
In my case, I actually felt a knot in the pit of my stomach the entire time watching. It was hard to watch. Again, I pretty much tuned out most news sources except for written since a couple of days after January 6th.
I can only imagine. And I want people to know, we had told you we were going to play that video as we were introducing you because we know that you don't want to see it, so you could look away for that. But you do want the American people to see it. Why?
Well, I mean, honestly, I do pay attention to some of the conversations, rhetoric, whatever you want to call it, out there, pertaining to, in particular, the January 6th committee investigating this, the insurrection. That it was a it was a tourist attraction. It was, everybody was singing "Kumbaya" with each other. I wish, and I actually saw a lot of people saying, "Well, I'm not going to watch it. It's a dog and pony show." That's just them being ignorant. They really need to see what actually happened that day.
Both of us have spoken to quite a few people who were there. This was definitely not fake. It was definitely not a horse and pony show. There was a mob riot. People died. How do we fix this? This is, everything's become so polarized. People have their minds made up already. Many won't listen. It's sad.
I know you had a chance to speak with Officer Edwards in private around her testimony. What did she tell you?
Well, she told us what a hero Brian was. That while she was going through the ordeal she was going through, Brian was right there with her. Brian was filling, whenever there was a breach in the line, Brian was filling that breach. It's just, it's reassuring to know he was a hero. I just wish he was still here.
I'm so sorry again for both of your loss. And I know how hard it is for you to relive it again and again and again as the rest of the country sees this evidence, some of it for the first time. Your brother's partner, Sandra Garza, issued a statement before the testimony last night. She said, "Justice for me, justice for Brian, would be having Donald Trump in prison, but it doesn't seem like that ever happens. The man seems to escape justice time and time again, but maybe today would change that. That would be a wonderful thing." For you, what would justice be for your brother?
I mean, that's the least that could happen, would be him being thrown in prison. That night, while he was laughing and, cheering on the crowds, he still would wake up in the morning and be able to see his family.
Donald Trump has never paid the price for anything he has done his entire life. Any mistake he's made, it's all been swept under the carpet. It's all been made to go away. Let's see if it happens again or if there is actually justice served.
And just again, as we sit here with, I guess, 2 weeks more of hearings in front of us, what is it that you want to see from these hearings?
Well, I'd like to see the truth come out. There's a lot of fog. There's a lot of fog out there that just, people, especially the people that are defending Donald Trump, oh, he did this, he called up the National Guard. Well, that was debunked last night. All of the hero that he is, he's not. He's by and large, he's a narcissist. It's all about him. He couldn't care less about my brother. You know what? I'll say this: we got calls from a lot of politicians after my brother had passed, including Mike Pence. Not one tweet, not one note, not one card, nothing from him, because he knows.
Not even a postcard.
He knows he's the cause of the whole thing.
But he doesn't care.
Well, Ken, Brian, I do appreciate you being with us last night. I know it's been a difficult 24 hours for you. Please give our best to your mother as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us on.
Always. We are going to be back with much more on the hearings and what's next.
When you grow more, you'll naturally have more to balance. With an expanding community of female entrepreneurs and 22% of working Africans starting businesses, support for new and growing enterprises across the continent has never been more important. Access Bank's digital loans have so far provided over 260 billion naira to upwards of 1.8 million customers and counting. Access, more than banking.
One of the uses of artificial intelligence in radiology right now is finding breast cancer. Because if you find breast cancer early, you can do a very good job of curing somebody with relatively minimal treatment. Fujifilm's medical AI can help by highlighting which of those 1,000 images has an important finding on it. We can take care of patients on a more timely basis and ultimately make a huge difference for those patients.
I'm Salma Abdulaziz in Kyiv, and this is CNN.
All new African Voices Changemakers. Create opportunities. Impact communities. Transform lives. Meet the photographers who are capturing stories on equality and social justice.
I felt that it was my responsibility to document our realities.
African Voices Changemakers, this weekend on CNN, in association with Glow.
We're here now at the home of one of the FSB team, and my name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
It's just been a chaotic scene here. People are so exhausted. Just gonna help her carry this bag. We were just in the hospital. It was shocking. Why do you think India has been hit so badly? Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
Why does a small group of women asking for their right to be educated threaten you so much?
Raise your hand if you love school. I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you. You can hear gunshots every couple minutes. Now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their story.
On Culinary Journeys, meet Japan's Natsuko Shoji, a chef earning rave reviews. Inspired by art, she is a rising star in French cuisine and in an industry where men dominate. See how she overcame life's challenges despite the odds and is now paving the way for a new generation. Culinary Journeys, Sunday on CNN, in association with Ajinomoto.
This morning, the national average for a gallon of gas is just 1 cent shy of hitting an all-time high of $5. For 18 states, $5 gas is already a reality. That's the case here in Washington, D.C. for sure. Californians are paying well over $6 a gallon. So joining me now is the head of petroleum analysis for GasBuddy, Patrick DeHaan. Okay, the question I have is, yes, we are at this point. We are at $4.99. How high will it go?
Well, I don't really see any improvement anytime soon. You wake up every morning, oil prices are up again this morning. The cost of RBOB gasoline continues to go up. Supply and demand fundamentals aren't improving drastically. Americans are still taking to the road. In fact, last week, government data pointing out that gasoline demand hit a 2022 high, even as gas prices are now surpassing $5 a gallon in more areas. So it's been incredible watching the resiliency of Americans that are taking to the road amidst high prices.
So you've been showing on GasBuddy this huge increase in gas prices that we've seen here in the past year. So let's take a look at some of the maps that you have put up so we can discuss this. What have you been seeing? What have the trends been?
Well, in the last couple of weeks, we have seen a rapid surge in gas prices in much of the Midwest, really the Great Lakes. In fact, earlier this week, We saw a 95-cent daily jump in Elgin, Illinois, where prices shot from $4.89 to basically $5.89 in less than 7 days. The increases in the Great Lakes have been fast and furious. You'll notice that Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois are all at that $5 mark. A lot of that is coming as gasoline supplies in that region are now at their lowest seasonal level since records began to be kept back in 1990.
You mentioned demand is really, I mean, you're not seeing the prices impacting demand here. Is that just because people don't have a choice? Why isn't it impacting demand?
Well, I think it's because few people have a choice, especially as many jobs are going back to in-person working environments, office working environments. But beyond that, keeping in mind that this is the best summer to hit the road since the start of the pandemic. It's better than last summer. Motorists may be feeling better. The jobs market has been very good. Wages are up. Unemployment is down. And that may be inspiring Americans and giving them confidence that they can spend more, given the fact that they're feeling relatively good about being able to find another job if something happens and hit the road.
What could alleviate this? I mean, we talked to the White House, and it seems like, you know, they're caught trying to do things, but it's actually very difficult to make an impact on this number. What kinds of things might actually shave some sense off these dollars?
Yeah, it is very difficult because this is a global issue, not just a U.S. issue. Now, there are some laws and regulations that the president could choose to forego this summer, requirements like burning summer gasoline. Winter gasoline in some areas of the country could usher in a drop of 25 to 50 cents. But there's also ramifications that go along with that. That summer gasoline burns cleaner. It leads to cleaner air. And so there is a trade-off there. Beyond that, the president may be able to improve the long-term outlook by giving the sector some security, some certainty that the administration sees over the next 5 years ahead of the transition that, you know, oil companies are not going to be their target. I think that would do more in the long term. But again, you don't build Rome overnight. You can't solve this gasoline price problem overnight either. It's going to take some time.
And in the meantime, we will all be paying dearly. Patrick De Haan, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
A life-threatening lung condition kept her attached to an oxygen tank even when performing on stage. And today's The Human Factor, meet a singer-songwriter who's beating the odds and hoping to inspire others facing medical challenges.
Without that judgmental faith. I was having that dream life singer-songwriter performer. I was recording all the time. And then this whole thing just happened. I'm Chloe Tempchin. I'm a singer and a songwriter, and I received a life-saving double lung transplant. Pulmonary hypertension is high pressure in the arteries of the lungs. It makes your heart have to work too hard, and eventually your heart fails. I was told by one of the nurses, you know, you're gonna have to be on oxygen for the rest of your life. I was like, oh, oxygen? I'm like, I can't be on oxygen. I'm a singer, I'm a performer. The idea always for me was, I'm gonna find someone who's thriving with pulmonary hypertension, and they're gonna be my source of inspiration. All I found was like, die, death, death, death. So I thought, all right, how can I turn myself into that person? And then it was years of just doing everything in my power to stay alive and to also try to live. On my treadmill one day, my heart shot up to 175, and then I have a heart attack. I then ended up in a coma for 4 days. On August 4th, 2020, lungs came in just in time because nobody thought that I could push through much longer. My mission is to continue to bring awareness to pulmonary hypertension, to the importance of organ donation, and then to inspire hope in people. You save me.
Lovely. The Uvalde Schools police chief opening up this morning about the response to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School, why he says he didn't think he was in charge.
And why the PGA Tour is suspending golfers who play in this Saudi-backed tournament.
Inside Africa Fact File, in association with Zenith Bank.
David McKenzie in Cape Town, and this is CNN.
I'm Andrea Vena. I'm the Chief Climate and Sustainability Officer at the European Space Agency. The great responsibility that ESA has to be responsible is linked very much to the fact that since decades our programs are contributing to the understanding of climate change. Our satellites are contributing to the climate variables that are used by scholars and scientists all over the world to identify what are the hotspots for climate change. Therefore, we feel accountable. We know what is the situation, and therefore it is very much important for ESA to be on the leading edge for fighting against climate change.
Coronavirus. To get daily news updates in your inbox, sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus. Fact versus fiction.
I'm Patrick Ottman in Havana, Cuba, and this is CNN.
This morning, President Biden pivoting to the nation's top economic challenges as he hosts foreign leaders at the Summit of the Americas. He is set to speak about